Welcome to the EOcafe, where the EO community meet. We're very happy today to have two very distinguished guests, who I'll introduce in a moment. But just as the first reminder, the rules of the EOcafe, you're very welcome to keep your cameras on. We like to see you. We like everyone to see each other, but please keep your microphones off unless I invite you to join us, come in for the conversation. In order to do that, we need to have you asking questions. So if you have a question, please put it into the chat, and then we can see what's coming up, and we can sort of prepare ourselves as well. So that's about it. So welcome very much, everyone. We're in the ERSC offices again, and which is a pleasure. And I think we're going to have more EOcafes from here. And we're even thinking about having live audiences. Well, we've got a sort of certain live audience here today because we've got Natasha and Francesco, but others could join us in the cafe. But today, as I say, we have two distinguished guests, Xavier Pasco. I don't know how many of you know Xavier. We've known each other for quite some time now. Xavier is director at the Fondation de la Recherche Stratégique in Paris, FRS, and is an expert on the strategy for space, and particularly associated with defense. And then Celestino Gomez, who many of you will know, works for GMV, but in the context of today, he's also a director of ERSC and the ERSC treasurer, and is the chair of the newly formed defense working group of ERSC. And so, and that sort of sets the context today. So before I go any further, let me just ask Xavier and Celestino just to say a few words, to introduce themselves, to get to know them. Xavier, please.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff, and I'm very happy to be with you today to discuss these issues. Maybe you want. Okay, I've been interested in Earth observation for a long time, and you referred to our long mutual relationship, Jeff. I think it has started, by the way, around these issues about GMES and all these things. At the time, it was called GMES, I would say.
I think it was probably the security program, particularly, but
yeah, that's true. In 2003 or something.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
I just wanted, I'm not sure it's appropriate for the format. I just wanted to give a few words about the topics itself and how we could approach it, and how I do approach it. But I won't be too long. I hope it's okay with you, Jeff.
Well, just to say what you do, Xavier,
okay.
And your own expertise. And
okay, so on myself, yeah.
I'm
myself, by training, I'm a political scientist. So I've been heading the foundation for something like 7 years now. And our foundation, FRS, is a security and defense oriented think tank in France. Well, in fact, the leading think tank on security and defense issues. And obviously, we have an interest in all these technologies, and in Europe also, of course, in the building of a European policies in this domain. And I myself specialized on space issues. I've worked a lot both in the US and about the US in this respect, and in these domains. But we are more and more involved in topics related to space applications, but also more and more in topics related to space situational awareness, space traffic management, and all these things. So I will stop there. Maybe, there's a lot of things, but we'll discuss.
There's a lot to say, but thanks, Xavier. Celestino?
Thank you, Jeff, for introduction. Yeah, Celestino, I'm director of affairs now since I think many years. So and also treasurer. And yeah, I'm also chair for this recently formed working group on security and defense, trying to bring this new topic on the discussion of the association. So we are now working very, very, very hard on producing some inputs for the stakeholders on this. And myself, I've been working in space, I think, since last 20 years, linked it since the very beginning of Earth observation, and also on defense and security part. I've been project director of many projects on space related to security and defense. And now I'm based in Brussels. I'm working with more political issues on EU matters, but okay, always linked to Earth observation also on this topic of security and defense.
So Celestino has finally migrated around and ended up in Brussels, where so many of us get stranded.
Yeah.
As Celestino says, defense has been a topic that ERSC has not really tackled very much in the past, largely because of the Brussels focus, but also I think because it's a difficult subject. It's becoming now far more important, and we mentioned that ERSC has this newly formed working group around defense with the objective to produce a position paper. And so today we also see as an opportunity for that working group to sort of meet virtually and to develop an understanding of the topic, helped by Xavier. And so we see this not just as an EOcafe, but also as a meeting of the group, but obviously a meeting of the working group that's open to all. Normally ERSC working group meetings are for ERSC members. So it's a dual meeting. Since the early days of GMES and Copernicus, defense has always been the elephant in the room. It's never really been openly discussed, or very rarely openly discussed. The security aspects were introduced as a way to sort of try to reflect defense needs. But this part of the program is now really coming into question, and the use of defense or space for defense and Earth observation defense is really rapidly rising up the political agenda, hence the interest in it. In that context, Xavier and I were recently part of a working group where we were looking at the Copernicus space segment from 2030 plus, and we had a number of discussions around defense and how the program could be used more to meet defense needs. But there are two issues very clearly. One is the civilian nature of the program, which means the resolution of the core parts of Copernicus rather than the contributing missions, but the core parts are not suitable for many space applications. They can, for many defense applications, they can be used, and we've heard of examples, but they're a little bit limited. Plus, the fact that it's a civilian program with the free and open data policy rather compromises the need for its ability to meet defense needs, or at least the defense users are rather shy of it. So this brings into perspective the contributing missions, the commercial contribution, which is where we want to discuss around the working group and what happens. So now we know the big problem is the lack of a common European defense policy, common EU defense policy. Up to now, member states have protected the interests and kept the defense dossier, but this cannot continue. I mean, I think we're seeing with the war in Ukraine that there has to be a change. We don't know where the US will go with NATO. We don't know how much support will continue. So Europe has to have a stronger role and play a stronger role in the defense scenario. Of course, what will be the future of NATO is also an interesting question. I don't know whether we can talk about that today, but it obviously affects the way the industry and the association work. So the balance between European and NATO and all these different interests. And so the goal today is sort of to prepare this picture, understand the EU context of defense policy and the execution of that policy, the roles of the various players, whether it's industry, ESA, EDA, or indeed NATO, and of course the member states, what capabilities are overall needed and what capabilities are missing. So that's quite a broad agenda for the discussion. So I'd like to start off by sort of giving Xavier the floor, sort of put his perspective on the role of defense in space, and particularly the EU has ambitions, where the EU is going, can go, and where space feeds in. Xavier, let's please.
All right, thank you, Jeff. You said it all, in fact, but I will. Well, I think all the questions you mentioned are of course, very central. And but before addressing the European, where we are in Europe on these issues, I think it's always good to highlight the space landscape in this particular EO domain where we are also, because it's a very active contributor to the reflection we have in Europe about the future of the sector in Europe. I wanted to just to stress some elements on this. And if we look at the field of the Earth observation activity in space, I think, and in a very simplistic manner, and to go quick, I think two main changes in the field. Of course, the first one is the multiplication of the number of EO satellites that we see now, smaller, cheaper, etc. We all know that, but there's some sort of industrial change for this part of the activity. It's not the only one that's been affected, but I think we must realize that we're changing many things in the space domain. And I know that the space community has hard times sometimes realizing how deep and how fast these changes are. And the second thing I have noted over the years, it's not only for the EO, by the way, but also for the EO, it's that the information and IT industry has taken giant steps forward and has been able to appear as an industrial sector in itself, capable of supporting the upstream space industries. And it's justifying, for example, the multiplication of these space-based sensors that I mentioned, as satellites. And it was really, it was not created by a magic wand. I mean, it comes from a political evolutions behind all this. And I think it's important to realize, because space does not only evolve as a techno structure, I would say, it evolves as a political structure. And we need to realize that, because Europe is a political construct, and we need to reconcile this in Europe. So it goes back into the 90s, in my view. At this time, the status of the Earth observation has been transformed by political decisions, mostly made in the US, by the way, at the time, that have converted public investment, often coming from the military side, by the way, into industrial and commercial strategies. And we have many examples in the 90s where these political decisions were made in the US and have radically changed the environment of the Earth observation at the time. And in this field, as for others, there has been a lot of a form of political capitalization of the past military investments inherited from the Cold War and from all these things, in order to adapt them to the new geostrategic and to the new geoeconomic context. We need to understand this. It's very much political. And this junction between the space world and the information IT world was central in this respect. And I think for two reasons. It has prepared the first wave of commercialization of the Earth observation imagery from space. This commercialization has started in the mid-90s, and it has sowed the seed for the second wave, I would say, of industrialization, as we experience it today, with the multiplication of the new actors and new programs over the years 2000, 2010s. So the option has been a radical change in the way that has been produced and used. And we in this respect, we can highlight several trends. We go from military to security uses. More and more, the frontier between the both is getting blurred. Earth observation is more considered as a service than as a technique. And we go beyond only producing imagery today, and we have to understand that. And it may be hard sometimes. There's a radical change in the way the performance of an EO system has been assessed. It used to be the image quality, the ground resolution, etc. It's still true. I mean, you need to build neat systems in terms of performance, but it's not enough. What is expected today is more and more enriched information with spectral bands and all that. And in addition, and more importantly, accurate information services require information freshness. And this implies operating many satellites for better revisit time, and we could call that time resolution. So we had one sort of resolution, you know, the optical people, the optics people who are very much betting anything on the quality of the image. Now we have three types of resolution: ground resolution, spectral resolution, and time resolution. And any system you see appearing is organized around the balance of these three resolutions. And that's a strategic decision. So this must be taken into account. And again, this must be thought in associating larger communities, in my view. Of course, all of this is obviously not without interest from the point of view of the military and the defense and security people, beyond the only economic virtues, I would say. So these technologies have evolved in such a way that now answers can be produced for larger security needs, whether it is with man-made risk or natural risk or threats. And in this respect, I would say in a sort of a paradoxical way, Europe may have appeared as a front runner when GMES, Global Monitoring for Environmental Security, was conceived at the end of the 90s. There was already I would say, a very early interest in this domain, and it's been transformed into global monitoring for environment and security, underlining this need for this push for security. And Europe was very at the forefront at the time of this of these uses and of these perspectives. And we know that Copernicus sense has become a success and all this. So what's the issue for Europe today? It's confronted with the rise of these new actors, and Europe must put itself in position to make the best of it while preserving the control over some of its key programs, and Copernicus is, of course, Sentinels and all that, some of those. So these new trends must be integrated in the new European security and defense equation. And that's not the least of the challenge. And for my part, I tend to see three types of challenge. We discussed that the other day, Jeff. For Europe to be able to adapt its structures and procedures to better take advantage of these developments. And I would materialize this in the form of three main axes on which cursors are positioned and may be positioned. The first axis is the civil-military axis we have to reflect on. This implies structuring the perimeter of defense and security. What do we mean by defense? What do we mean as Europeans by security? Judging the possible complementarities with military uses that involve states, but also possibly NATO. I will come back to this later on. And taking the measure of the duality of the data and services in modern information systems. So it's a particularly complicated issue, especially in the latest case, insofar as nothing is static and technologies are progressing very, very quickly. There's another axis. The second one, to my mind, is the member states versus Europe. We all know that we're talking about strategic autonomy. We're talking about defense, and you mentioned it, Jeff. Defense has always been in the realm of member states rather than in the realm of the European Union, and we have all these definition issues. The evolving European and defense security context will be crucial to develop the right services and organize the complementarity with member states. We have to work around the relationship with NATO, as you mentioned. That's for sure, even if NATO today, in this particular domain of the Earth observation, is not particularly active by itself. But again, it's a very political. There's a lot of political sensitiveness in this domain. And to make it quick, the last axis, last but not least, is the commercial public access. The question that is asked is how to stimulate and promote an commercial EU sector and make the best of it from the European perspective. And we have models for that. We see that the US have tested many different formula, and even recently they reinvented something new. We have to inspire from that, but we don't have to maybe copy and paste, because we don't come from the same origins, and we may not have exactly the same determining features around us and organizations, and we're 27 member states and all that. So I think I just want to leave it here for leaving some questions open here, and maybe in the discussion we'll go a bit further down deeper in those questions.
I think there are plenty of questions to explore further. I have quite a few, and again, the idea is that the working group can also start to intervene and express their views. In which case, I'll hand over at this point to Celestino to say a few words from the working group perspective and how it sees that going.
Yeah. As starting way we did this within the working group. Okay, we were addressing this in the frame of the evolution of Copernicus, and then we saw that we will need a specific action within the association to address these topics. And I think we have put together a good representation of the industry, value-added industry, but also covering the full value chain, because we have solid integrators in the working group with, I think, few objectives at the beginning, just to start a dialogue and to start a process that will not end up with a communication, but just to enable to build a solid base to the value-added industry to contribute to the further utilization and evolution of the value-added industry towards defense and security. So this was the foundation. We are trying to bring all the elements together. We are first trying to better understand which is the context, which are the gaps, which are the capabilities that we have, which are the ambitions and the need we see around us, and who is who in such a context that we want to get into. So this it's a large process, although we want to do some kind of outputs in a short term in order to contribute to the policy making the commission and other actors are doing now. Our ambition is try to really address the topic as a holistic thing, bringing all together capabilities, policies, gaps, and so forth. And that I think is important. So that's the aim for the working group. We are starting slowly. We started slowly because there is not a simple topic to address. It's the first time. There are sensitivities to deal with. And our main idea is first start for example, we are first starting with understanding which are the capabilities we have within the value-added industry in order to address the potential needs the defense and security industry will have, but not as has been done so far, because all of us have been working with here and there with some users on defense, but really to bring a new capability that is able to cover units, not solving some small issues in a specific context for a specific moment in some area. So it's really to create a capacity that can serve as a new element for the EU to address the needs that we are seeing now, but sure in the future will come more and more. So that's one of the elements we are working on together in order to understand which are all of those capacities, which are the gaps, and which are the elements we can use to fill those gaps, and in the process, and who we have to deal with to fill those gaps. One of the main concerns in such process of seeing which are the needs, the capacities, and how we can bring it together is to have a deep understanding of which are the needs of the user side, but not only needs, but how to integrate space into the operational way of working of those users, which is not a simple task. So trying to enable this the Earth observation application tools information is part of the day-to-day work of the defense and security. So this is one of the things. And one of the other pillars we are trying to address is let's see to understand which are the boundaries, which are the constraints, which are the potential things that we have to improve or to get better in order to better understand the context, to better identify which applications are suitable for what, to better put names and concepts to we are doing, which is security, which is defense, which are the products, some extent from which are the boundaries between security and defense, between civil and defense. So this is an in-depth discussion we are also having within the working group, which is, I think, is important in order to classify, because there are some products that could be used for both civil and security, but it's not as simple as take the product from civil and put in defense. There are many things around has to be taken into account in terms of security of the information, but also in the way this should be presented to the defense users, for example. And another element we are addressing also within the working group is the community. So we are trying to see which could be the role for the industry, of course, which are representing, but also which will be the role for EDA, which could be the role on NATO and on the Commission, the External Action Service in the EU, all together. So trying to be a part of this puzzle in order to fit in the best way, which are our voice, our capabilities, and also ambitions and needs. So, and that's the way we are. We plan now to complete first communication before the end of this month, trying to bring some of those elements in written in order to contribute to the dialogue the Commission is having, with this communication with the External Action Service and the path, the way up to the next MFF, that maybe something will come. Of course, we have the limitation of the European treaties to do some things in defense, but I think there are enough room to do to build up at least a reasonable EU capability using, in this case, Earth observation to address those needs.
So I think industry understands the capabilities it has. We can market those. The goal is to understand where the technology gaps are, but then where are the priorities in addressing those technology gaps? Who do we talk to? Who does industry talk to address those issues, Xavier?
Yeah, I think that's the right question, Jeff. Precisely, I would say the technology issue might be the easiest one. I mean, we all realize that there's a number of improvements and level of progress in many technologies, and we may produce a lot of different sensors and different architectures and all that. The real issue is first, how do you make it a successful business model for industry? Second, what would be the factor that could jumpstart the whole mechanic? In my view today, if you look at what's going on in the US and maybe elsewhere, space programs today are made up of three different, are working on 3 feet, I would say. Some sort of a tripod. You need to have a very high level space sector, and very highly competent, highly skilled industry, etc. That's the case for Europe. No issue with that. We know how to do satellites. We would know how to do required satellites in the years to come. We have a bit of a problem in the access to space nowadays, but we know how to do the things. I mean, it's okay. But we know now that it's not enough. We know that it's not enough for a space program to be a success, for a space policy to be a success. You need another kind of strong pull. And this strong pull is a downstream industry that adds value to the upstream industry. In the case of the US, you have all this information industry. I mean, the Amazons, all these people who, you know them, who are able to mobilize huge resources and who find in the space industry, and it dates back only for a few years, an interesting industry to add value to their own business. That's new. And this is why, by the way, because of this improvement in low-cost technologies and all that it becomes desirable from their part to invest in business. But it's not enough. You have to have these two things, but you have also to have a government that is willing to jumpstart the process, I would say, and inject for its own needs money and resources in this relationship between the upstream and downstream industry. And it's to the benefit to their own missions and own objectives. I mean, the public ones, it can be military, and it's often military, by the way. I have examples in the US. And then when you have this triangle, you end up having some sort of a self-sustaining mechanics that could, help develop the activity as a whole. But the space activity mustn't be approached from with an isolated perspective on the space sector itself. That exists in the US because you have the upstream, you have the downstream, and you have the government able and willing to invest. at least to start the business case and then help. So there's a positive sum game here. There is a mutual benefit in getting this investment, and there is return on investment. This may be the case in China, by the way. We see that in telecommunication field in China, you may have this tree structure with these three different poles. Now let's go to Europe. We have a very fine space industry. Where is the downstream industry that would add value to this very fine space industry? That's an issue. And then we have to create the political decision of 27 member states who have to find their own interest in injecting money in starting this process. So that's the whole story of how we have to behave in Europe to create some sort of movement, that will in the end self-support itself in a sense. That's not easy. We have to write a political story because on the downstream side we're a bit awkward. So I think the industry itself, I mean the upstream industry, must some sort of create a narrative, and the Earth observation systems are have a lot of positive values in the political field and all that in the diplomatic field. So we need to invent a storyline in a sense, and it's not done yet, in my view. That's the issue. We need to convince our member states. We need to convince our European Union community that this is worth investing in it. It's not done yet. We have to work on it, and it means going to all the institution you mentioned, Celestino. I mean, of course, EDA, NATO, but it's not enough. I think we must go and maybe work more at the level of the member states, which in the end are the decisive actors in all this. I think the European Commission is quite convinced of this. There's no issue with that. So I think it's we have a lot of parallel work to organize, but I'm not sure, Jeff, it answers your question, but that's the way I see it.
It provides an answer. I find it I coming from a Brit, maybe it's strange, but I see more Europe rather than less Europe. And the problem to me here is that we don't have enough Europe in my perspective. So yes, we need member states to support a European approach, and yes, that means going and lobbying in member states. But I hope that there is a stronger European presence and a stronger European pull, which again to me seems sort of inevitable given the current geostrategic setup.
You're right, but I think it goes hand in hand. If you don't have member states, you don't have Europe. Member states must be convinced. I mean, it can seem harsh when I say, but in the end, that's what happened. Look at, when the 27 member states, meet and have to make a political decision as a member of the European Union. This is where the crucial point is. I mean, so it has to be prepared in advance at the level and harmonized. And then you have to find more than a minimal position. You have to find, this is the challenge, a very active and enthusiastic way of doing things in a European way. We don't have to oppose member states and European Union. We don't have to oppose. And of course, we know that where it comes from. But very often, people, it's member state versus Europe. And I did it myself on my axis in a sense. But we need to position this cursor in such a way that it's a positive sum game. It's not easy. I think we have a real, we're lagging behind in this respect. And that's why the defense and security issues have not been addressed properly and cannot be addressed very easily in the context of the European Union.
Yeah. Our guy had a strong statement here, and I'm struggling to remember precisely what it was, but it was along the lines that the European Commission without the member states can do nothing. The European Commission, the member states on their own can do a lot, but the European Commission and the member states together can do anything they want.
Yes.
that was at least the sentiment of what he.
And the member states on their own can do less and less.
Yeah. In this world, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I fully agree. Indeed, one of our main questions we are addressing is, will be the member state utilize, or what they need to utilize EU space Earth observation-based infrastructure to serve their needs? So that's a concern we have. This will be a real asset for them or not? Maybe some member states yes, maybe others no. There will be enough to have them agree on put money on this. Maybe some member states not. So, but at the end, what is clear, this a misequilibrium in the capacities of member states to address this. So we need at some time to level the playing field between member states, because there are so many differences that
Yes,
and that's our aim in order to convince also all the member states that have already such capacity to try to level the capacity across Europe with EU capability for this. So I think it's clear.
We've had a few comments in the chat from Wolfhard Geiler, who I'm afraid I don't actually know. Wolfhard, you make a very good point about collaboration and cooperation, which for me is also something which Europe has some mastery over. And please come in and make your point, or ask your question.
Yeah, first let me introduce myself. I'm actually coming in from Canada here, and sorry about the background noise. I'm in between several meetings, so I quickly went to one of my favorite real cafes to join the EOcafe. So that's the background noise. I used to be, that's why you saw my comments. I used to be the representative for DLR, the German space agency, German Aerospace Center here in Canada for many years, and now I'm semi-retired. Returning back to the private sector. And I was just about to write another comment here. I think one of the biggest advantages Europe has is this sense of collaboration. I lived in the States, I've worked with US institutions as well. There's more of a cutthroat competition going on there. Friendly though, but still it's cutthroat. Europe has this, what I termed co-opetition, a term that Airbus or Conspatio often use. And I think this is the big advantage. The comment I was just about to write here was that we also have in Europe a huge number of, and I say huge, there's more than a dozen individual research and development centers, starting with JRC at the EU level. We have STEC from ESA. Then we have the nationals, DLR, Fraunhofer, EMEC in Belgium, huge into IT and now also into space. And by the way, I'm expecting to be in Brussels in about 2 weeks' time, speaking with them. So we do have this huge potential in Europe. If we funnel this down into the downstream industries, this could be more than just a jump start. This could be an immediate accelerator. One thing we can learn here from Canada, and that's my personal experience here with Canadian colleagues, is Canada, with their National Research Council, NRC, has an industrial research and assistance program called NRC IREP that does exactly that. It takes, and Canada only has a few research institutions in this case. It takes research and takes it from those research institutions into the industries, mostly small and medium-sized, mostly small startups. And it also organizes all the funding around it, and it actively, this NRC IREP program, look into it, it actively coaches and accompanies startups and small and medium enterprises into new markets until they're fully self-sufficient. If we combine that with our European network of R&D institutions, I think we have a worldwide advantage. So this is my main comment. And also in Europe, and my background is in remote sensing and also in reconnaissance. I used to be a reconnaissance intelligence reserve officer on the side. What we missed out on in Europe is for the past 20, 30 years, we have been spending billions of euros of national currencies into the space program, space assets, very, very little into the downstream application side. And I think this is the biggest thing we need to move. The US, of course, do spend more money into that, but most of it again goes into military. If you put this into dual use in Europe, you will have a dual benefit, boosting defense and security and boosting our industry, so it's the value market at the same time. This is basically my comment. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, pleasure. Thank you for that, and please continue the conversation in the future. Any reaction, guys?
I share 100% what's been said. I think we don't have to confuse again, and I completely share what Wolfert said. I mean, regarding the relationship between R&D and the industry or TCU, I would say, and that's for sure. And then, in addition to that, we need to look to the downstream, to the external community, to this IT world, and we need to promote that also to enrich and to support this new industrial sector, this transformed space sector that we would bring about. So it's a very complex, intricate kind of, it's a multi-folded policy that we need to generate in order to make sure that this new space landscape fits well with its environment. This is crucial. This has been crucial in the US. If you trace back the history of space and information, you go back to the 90s and you can really sense how it's been done. I mean, there's not an invisible hand. I mean, it's been very pragmatic in a sense, but it's about information. It's not about space. It's about information.
Been very clear policy lines followed. That leads quite nicely, I think, to Emmanuel Mondon, who asked the following question, talking about cooperation or competition. How much do we need competition? How much do we need cooperation? Do we need competition, or is cooperation enough? Emmanuel, just come and express your views. You're still muted. Yeah.
Hi, Jeff. Hi, Ho. Yeah, competition or cooperation. I mean, when you are speaking about space, the competition is worldwide. So I would rather support a cooperation approach among European stakeholders, competing with the world, rather than competing ourselves inside Europe, and then we will all die versus US, Chinese, or whomever having lots of money, lots of power, lots of technologies. But I'm biased here because I'm a strong supporter of cooperation. So I do admit I have a bias.
You're breaking up, Emmanuel. Thanks for that. I think it's coming back a little bit for me to the more Europe, the more cooperation within Europe to achieve goals. Mark, you're asking about governance and how space defense policy or EO policy can be governed. Mark.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good afternoon, Xavier. And yeah, indeed, I'm just reacting with respect to the question raised by Xavier about the awareness of the different European member states. I think that the awareness is there, and I've just taken the recent example of Poland, who just purchased very high resolution satellites for its own use, just because perhaps they are closer than others to non-European boundaries. But the pity is that at the end, the procurement was done by one member state and not by Europe, European structure. And the problem I see is, of course, problem of organization, as mentioned by Xavier, the importance of the downstream applications and so on, but also, and I think more importantly, a problem of governance. Who can lead the policy, the European policy for defense and security in space without having, I would say, a common view about it. And that, I think, makes a big difference with respect to US. And, we all know that the US defense played a huge role in developing all the ecosystem in US, and unfortunately, I think this situation is not similar in Europe, where by definition, I would say, for the time being at least, the European common defense governance doesn't exist. And the question is, can it exist aside NATO or not? Just open questions.
Yeah, if I may comment, but not comment, I mean, I think we have two problems. One problem is the missing downstream industry. I'm schematic here. I'm very oversimplifying things. I know that, but it's just for the sake of clarity. And second, we don't have a common defense policy. Okay, so these two things makes us quite slow and vulnerable when it compares to others, to the big ones. Okay, but we have one thing, for example, that has been a success, it seems to me. And it's linked with security in a sense. Copernicus. Copernicus is very much related to the safety of Earth, safeguarding the plan A. You know, you have the plan B with Mars, and you have the plan A. You have, and in a sense, Europe has been a leader in promoting environmental policies, you know, and responsible policies and all that. And you could support the fact that having Copernicus is a sign that Europe has gotten his acts in order with his words. I mean, it has the program. Europe could be seen as a guardian angel of the Earth in a sense. Okay, and that could be a political narrative. This is the political narrative we can have with Copernicus about how much Europe is involved in environmental protection. We need to find a similar narrative for defense and security, and maybe for security instead of defense. So go deeper into security. And I think this is very important. It's not completely impossible. But it has to convince all the member states that it's worth the political investment, because it will create a European identity. I mean, Europe has a chance to appear in the general international landscape as a very specific power. You know, invested in very specific global interest topics and issues. We need to maybe go a bit deeper in this and join and create the relationship with security as a whole, with human security in that sense. This is something you should go a bit deeper into, I think.
I would agree with that, and I think I come back on the comment that you and Wolfhard both made about the downstream sector, because I believe that we have a very strong downstream sector in Europe.
Okay.
The problem is that it's fragmented, very, very fragmented, which reflects again the member state distribution, because service is something which is easily to localize.
The Amazon Web Service, it's 60 billion revenues per year.
Yeah.
Microsoft Azure, it's 40 billions just for the cloud application. Yeah. 40 billions per year. Alibaba, 11. Google, 10. Tencent, 7. I mean, where are the European web actors generating so much revenue?
They fully agree, and you correct me. But
no, I don't want to correct you, and I oversimplified that. That's for sure.
You can, but I think it still holds, and I completely agree that we don't have that. You know, we've said for a long time that we need a European capability to be complementary. We need to have, you know, the not to be constrained by the business models of the big US US actors, and clearly that is a hole in Europe. But I think in the EO sector, the capability is there.
Yeah, for sure.
Celestina?
Yeah, I fully agree. But the issue is why, if there had not been intervention, this is the situation we are together. So we don't have any big players. So there's an action to be done. Otherwise, it will never happen. So that's the point. And I think that my fear is that we will never catch up. So that's the problem.
We need to be creative.
But if
not enough to being creative.
Not enough.
But defense is going to mandate it, isn't it?
Yeah. Maybe it's true. Maybe what to find is some niche on this area, and we may build something specific for that, and for that part grow to others. So using this context of security defense to do something, to start doing something at your level, and then start to grow and cover areas. But for me, it's difficult because I think 15 years ago, I had the same discussion with the Commission, and we're in the same situation now. So that is not simple. And I don't know why in Europe this not happened by default, by the natural commercial way of doing things. It didn't happen. So it's true that we needed 15 years ago a real intervention from the EU, from the member state on this regard to really build a European capacity. But this not happened then, and now I think we are in a weak situation on that regard. And you have also seen the access to Copernicus has been not simple to bring a real, fully operational European capability to access our own data. So being beyond that will be even more difficult. So I think there is something here to think about and try to, and maybe it's an opportunity also to think with this security, all data, blah, blah, that we can bring something strong and operational capable to grow in other domains too. So for me, I think it is an opportunity here.
I mean, certainly, if the defense policy is to evolve, then it has to. Emmanuel, have you got your connection back? No, maybe not. I think he's
mute.
I think.
In any case, I quite agree with this comment, the last comment. I mean, there is hope. Yeah, I don't want to give the feeling that it's completely without hope. I think yes, we need to take benefit from the specific position we have in the international scene, and Europe is seen as an experiment in a sense where states are exchanges some of their security. Sovereignty against some collective security, etc. We need to build on this. Maybe in environmental domain, I think we didn't do enough, and Copernicus is the first very, very strong step, and it's really in advance compared to others, US included. We need to work this more in this direction, and we need to create a narrative for that. I think this is a political side. But it goes hand in hand, I think. And then beyond this, we really touch upon security itself, what it means. It's multi-role, multi-function, weak signals, whatever you want. And the EO, we have, the legitimate role it needs to have. It deserves.
The key question is still is how we evolve. What path can we see to get there? Stelios has raised his hand. Stelios, come on.
Hello to everyone, and congratulations on the excellent setup. This event is absolutely useful. I'm more optimistic, I have to say. Definitely there's hope. I've been around some years, and I can say that lately, of course, there is clearly a redirection of the European Union with the member states, of course, towards tackling the issue of security and defense without the fear of the past, absolutely. And I absolutely agree that there are some characteristics, if I can call it that way, in Europe as the term competition that was used, which are definitely a competitive advantage, I believe, for the Union. and these competitive advantages, I believe that to a certain extent, there is an attempt lately, clear attempt lately, to support them and to make them flourish. So I didn't hear or I missed something about the initiative the last years of the EDIDP, the precursor of EDF, and the EDF itself, which are clear schemes, financial schemes, who are there to support space included domains. And I would say that the work done among all the member states is something to be praised at every occasion, exactly because it's very difficult to be done in that context, in the MOD's context, because they are always very close, they are always not sharing with the rest of the world anything. So it is to be praised the fact that they have sit together and they are working in a direction that has been giving positive results. For us, the downstream, which I absolutely agree with you, Jeff, obviously, that there is a strong know-how in Europe based on competition, on co-opetition, which is, as you said, fragmented, and that's maybe the biggest disadvantage for our for the European know-how, if I might say. So for us of the downstream, if specifically we had a specific voice within the EDF supporting specific activities, we have the framework, there is all the setup there, and then I'm sure that all of us will be more happy and more productive.
Sounds like some good lines for the paper,
Yeah.
to the Celestina.
Yeah, I think yeah. But
Of course, let me just also congratulate Celestino for the work he's putting and the effort he's putting there. I'm also a member, but without having had the contribution that I expected to have. So congratulations, thank you, and apologies again for not being able to participate that much.
There's still time, Stanios,
yeah,
no worries.
anything you can provide will be most of them welcome. Yeah, first I want to say that I'm pessimistic in a way, but it's true that these matters touch a lot upon what we want to be as a European Union. So definitely will go into the foundation of what we want to be as a European Union, and this is the fact which is so difficult. So all these differences and so on. And regarding the EDF, it's true, this is something we are also looking at. You know, there will be, EDF is an instrument to build capacities and technologies, but it's also somehow controlled by the member states in a way that they bring the program. But yes, this is an element we are also looking at, and I think for the working group we will feed into in order to see more and more opportunities also for the value industry, and to pave also the way up to define the line up to the next MFF. There will be more than that for the observation application. But yeah, this is something, and okay, all your input, for example, for the working group on this regard will be very welcome. Yes.
So a nice way to draw that to a close. So everyone who can contribute to the working group, all those members, very welcome. We're reaching the end of the time. I give the last floor to Xavier to sort of try to draw some thoughts from all that.
No, thank you, Jeff, and thank you for the discussion. It's really good. I don't want to leave you on a pessimistic note, and what has been said by our colleague from Greece. EDF is precisely the example of a successful political narrative that ensure the support from the member states to invest in a new defense-oriented perspective. But if you don't have the political support from the start to go into this direction, it goes nowhere, and then it goes somewhere because it is a successful political narrative, and especially nowadays because of the current context, you know, it's been reinforced and all that. So I agree with that, and I share the view that this is a very positive development, and we all know that for a few years, the European Union has transformed its approach from. So we have good hopes here, and I will. Of course, I'm hoping a lot.
Oh, we're all very positive, and
Yeah.
the situation is such that change has to happen. It's forced upon us, I think.
Yeah.
Thanks, Adrian, for posting the comment. It's good. You can certainly use the chat to post comments and to make promote events that you're aware of or links that you're aware of, and please ask everyone to, or encourage everyone to use that capability. That's the point. I'll draw this all to a conclusion. I think we had a nice discussion there. Very, very happy with that, and some good points to pick up from the future. We come to a very technical subject next time on the 23rd of March, the next EOcafe. We're looking at methane emission. So that will be of strong interest for sort of new space activities and all those who are interested in environmental issues. So please come and join us next time. Oh, I've got to give you another reminder. Please do complete the industry survey if you haven't already done so. We need your answers to complete the survey. We've got more answers now. We have been getting some responses to our appeals, but we still need further ones, and I cannot understand why we don't have every ERSC member as an absolute minimum responding to this survey. It's of vital importance for the policy makers, and as you know, it's ESA who is the primary sponsor, but at the same time it is highly used and appreciated by all the other stakeholders in the at the European level. So please complete that. Okay, Xavier, thank you very much for joining with us. Celestino, thanks very much for coming and so co-hosting this this EOcafe. Look forward to seeing you all in 2 weeks' time, and please, anyone wishing to stay and just chat, please feel free to do so. And for everyone else, thanks for your company, and stay healthy for the next time.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.